After Effects has been a standard in the visual effects and motion graphics industry for over 2 decades. Today on Make It, we'll celebrate the 25th anniversary of this industry-changing application with 2 of its original founders, followed by a visit to Territory Studios, who through their use of After Effects are truly redefining visual effects production. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today on the Make It Show. This is really awesome to have you both here to talk about the 25th anniversary of After Effects. I know our viewers really will be curious to sort of not only hear sort of the origins, but understand what the landscape was like 25 years ago, kind of in that world, and sort of the inspiration, how you got started with the product.
It was sort of the dark ages. Just to give you an idea of how different it was to start a company back then, the whole company had one email address, kosa@aol.com.
Right, oh,
yeah.
Big time.
It was different times, and we were trying to start a company to do hypermedia publishing. We wanted to be sort of like the online version of National Geographic.
Okay.
But by online, there was no web.
Right.
So that really meant distributing a magazine on CD-ROM.
Right.
That was the only thing that could distribute that amount of information. And it turned out no one really cared, and no one was interested in what a bunch of kids out of college wanted to publish. But in creating this magazine, we created some technology that allowed us to stream digital video from CD-ROM on Mac and Windows.
And that was a huge deal at that time.
Yeah, that was,
right, yeah.
Yeah, it was before digital video, so it was actually animation that we were streaming.
Right.
But the code to do streaming animation from CD-ROM was actually not really that different from doing videos.
Where were you sort of targeting the use of this new application, considering that it was, you know?
So we kind of designed it by just watching MTV.
Okay.
So we would watch music videos and think, well, how would we do that? How could a tool create that? And we sort of came up with this layered design that has the video in separate layers. It was really a compositor, even though this was a class of software we didn't really know anything about.
Right. How were they doing it then outside of the software world that we know today?
Yes. So these $1 million Quantel machines.
Right.
Could,
black box style.
Or multi-million dollar, yeah.
Right.
And with people earning, $500-700 an hour to operate them.
Right.
That was our competition. But we didn't know that because we were building this tool for ourselves that we knew would have been useful in our magazine production.
When did it actually catch the eyes of Adobe? Because at this point you're still Kosa, right? How many years did Kosa After Effects endure before?
So, Kosa was founded in 90. We started After Effects in 92.
Okay.
Shipped in 93.
Right.
And we had actually gone to Adobe and Aldus to try to get them to fund the development of what became After Effects. They weren't interested. We were unproven. So we did it ourselves, just bootstrapped it on sort of friends and family. But then after we shipped 1.0 in beginning of 93, that got the attention of both Aldus and Adobe.
Okay.
And we ended up going with Aldus. And so the summer of 93, we sold the company to Aldus. We were pretty tired at that point. Just having like a steady paycheck was a nice thing.
Sure.
And then we had to agree to move to Seattle within a year. We had to finish 2.0, move to Seattle. And we did, and right after we moved to Seattle, I think Dave C was our first. You were the first one that came out, right? You went to the...
I jumped.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll move.
Right. But we were there only like a month, and then Adobe and Aldus merger was announced.
Right.
And they're like, oh God, now we have to move to San Jose. But turned out, no, kept the Seattle office. And
one of the biggest changes I remember is going multilingual. Like we had just the English version, and when we got to sort of the Aldus building, Adobe building, I remember this whole cycle of just converting all this stuff so that it was like localization ready.
Right.
That was a monumental task.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was pretty fun though.
Which also opened up this application to audiences
to
everywhere.
all around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I have to imagine, again, at that time especially, there were few tools that could offer this level of localized support.
Yeah.
I think was 3 the first one, the UI turned color?
Yes. Oh my gosh, it was black and white in version 2.
It's hard to imagine, but version 1 and 2.
Right, black and white.
It's a video app,
but
the entire UI was monochrome, but it's black and white. I mean, of course, the image was in color.
Is in color, but right.
And a lot of it was down to the memory of the computers at the time. Like I had been pushing for color I'm like, let's do color, and they're like, no, there's not enough RAM. And I was in front of a user group one day, and I'm like, all right, guys, how many people would want it if they could sacrifice a megabyte of RAM to get a color UI? And everybody's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, vindicated.
Today, of course, After Effects is in virtually, I mean, almost every production, whether it's big film, whether it's commercial. Was there a period where you just sort of, where that just happened? I mean, obviously it's over time, but I can think back even 10, 15 years where it was already commonplace. I mean, it wasn't necessarily talked about, but it always augmented existing high-end visual effects and motion graphics.
A lot of places wouldn't say they used it because they
Right.
wanted to keep charging their clients.
Keep charging their
the
clients
original prices,
because
yes.
the hardware and the operators were so expensive. Right. So now, 25 years later, After Effects is everywhere. You have this incredible ecosystem of support and partners. And a couple of years ago, you start feeling like, maybe we need to try something a little new. Because at this point, people are using it for everything from motion graphics, visual effects, character style animation, just proper animations. What sort of spawned the dawn in this idea of going into Character Animator and creating a specific tool for character-based animation with that Photoshop Illustrator core?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we had noticed is when visiting customers, people were using expressions in After Effects to do incredibly complicated things like character rigging. And it's just very painful to do character rigging using expressions, very fragile. It can do a lot, but it's just very fragile and hard to work with.
Right.
And hard to share with anyone else. Like if you set up a very complicated rig for your character, there's no way you could
easily pass it along, right.
And at the same time, there are a lot of researchers from the research group that are co-located with us in Seattle. And over lunch, we got to talking about some of the new facial tracking stuff and other things for automatic animation. And we just put these ideas together. And from the beginning, this became a collaboration with the research group.
Okay.
To, instead of doing a tech transfer, like from the research into a product, we created a new product. And that was Character Animator. Right. Around the same time, The Simpsons called us and found out, because they found out what we were doing.
Right.
And they were doing an episode with Homer Simpson, who joins an improv team, and then the end of the episode, they wanted actually to improvise live on the air. And they found out that that's what we could do.
This tool was coming, right, yeah.
Yeah, so we worked with them, and that's how we did this improvised episode.
Right.
And that was our first big name.
And that was huge. And that was, again, sort of thinking about Character Animator now versus then, that was also still, there was a lot of manual stuff that was happening there in terms of a lot of the motion and the movements. This is before you added things like walk cycles, and you did have triggers, but it was still early days in terms of the implementation.
There are two groups of people that are interested in Character Animator. Someone like The Simpsons, obviously they know animation, and they can draw everything. But then there are people who don't know anything about animation, but they know how to illustrate using Photoshop Illustrator, and by naming things the right way and bringing it right into Character Animator, we auto-rig that and then bring that character to life, and they don't have to worry about the animation.
Right.
So
and they don't have to keyframe, and they don't have to tween, and they don't have to really know any of that.
That's right.
To have it become an animated cartoon, effectively.
So instead of taking weeks, it can now take seconds.
Right.
But that still requires you to be able to draw.
Right.
And so we are now also working on a third group, which is the people who don't even know how to draw or want to draw, and they just want to take an existing character and animate it just through the face tracking. And so we're working on making it so that puppets can be built by those people and be custom to them, but it looks like them, but it's in a style and it looks like a nice puppet. So that was we did a sneak at Max last year about the Project Puppetron, and that's still underway. Well,
this has been amazing. Now, I know we're going to take a look and actually get a demo of some Character Animator stuff, but before we do that, I thought we would head over to Territory Studios, big creators of visual effects and all kinds of amazing things in After Effects. They've got their London office, they've got a new one here in San Francisco, and maybe take a look at some of the work that they're doing. So let's send it over to Territory.
Hey guys, it's Hyla. I'm here in San Francisco at Territory Studios with Marty Romances, the co-founder and creative director here. Tell us what you guys do here at Territory.
We do motion graphics and VFX, which is specialized on film graphics and also applies to real technologies, especially here in the San Francisco office.
And especially here behind this door. Can we walk through here and see what you guys have cooking in here?
Let's go in. So this is a space that we started now 2 years ago in San Francisco.
Yeah, I see you've worked on some small little indie flicks here.
Some
The
indie.
Martian, Blade Runner. We have a Star Wars poster, an Avengers poster over there.
Yeah, we have a great relationship with Marvel, but also Ridley Scott.
I know you have some footage that you want to show us. Can we check it out?
Yeah, we can definitely check
Let's
it out.
do it.
Of course.
All right, so show us what you got cooking here.
Definitely. We can have a look at our UI reel, which shows some of the film projects we've been doing, like The Martian.
On any particular movie, how long are you working on that project?
Yeah, it really depends. We are involved in pre-production, making sure that all of these sets will be ready for when they're shooting. Therefore, we move into production with the art department, and then with some projects we move into visual effects with things that we cannot practically reproduce on set. And even with some projects, we also help the marketing departments with some of these graphics that we produce to promote the films.
So is there a specific creative exercise that you embark on when you have to create something new?
We do. The most important exercise is to dive into what the directors have in mind, read the script, have conversations with them, have conversations with the production designers, and really understand what's their vision. Some directors will really direct us where we have to be going. Other directors will let us do our thing within certain parameters.
When you create a UI, is it meant to be something that's super futuristic, or is it meant to be kind of rooted in where tech is today?
Different directors will want us to approach it in different ways. Again, with Ridley, he wanted to be really real, getting real to the technology. With Marvel, sometimes they want us to reinvent something that maybe is not tied to any real technology. We just need to invent a new technology from a different galaxy. And that allows us to be more open-minded when tackling different problems that we have with new technologies that are emerging.
How do you approach that creatively when you have to create tech that doesn't exist, when you have to look into the future, or in the Avengers case, look into another dimension or world and create something from scratch creatively? How do you kind of wrap your head around that and start that process?
I think for us, it's our big challenge is to keep reinventing ourselves. But one of the things that we learn is that we shouldn't be looking at what we already have. We should be getting inspired by other things. With Prometheus, which was our first feature, the team was highly inspired by undersea creatures. This set up the tone for the color palette. It set up some of the visualizations, 3D visualizations. So it's good to look at what's around us, not just look at graphics and motion graphics or graphic design done for film or games. It's more about getting inspired by other things, architecture, nature itself.
There was a talk that you did recently, and I thought you had a really good quote. You need rules. Each design is a character. Each design is a personality. Can you kind of expand on that?
I think that's very important. On Marvel, you have the different characters, and for each character, we have to create this technology. And some of them, they share technology, but when you have technology created for Tony Stark, and you have to be creating technology that's created by Dr. Banner or other characters, each one is going to be having that personality, and that's very important. And the same user interface and user experience rules that we will use in practical interfaces that we produce will be applied, those rules will be applied to films, even if they don't need to be functional. That helps having a cohesive and more consistent design.
Why do you guys use After Effects? Why do you feel like it works for the work that you do?
After Effects, it's been with us since the very beginning. We are all passionate motion graphic artists. We all had After Effects from the very beginning. That use of After Effects and motion graphics end up being in pipelines that we use for cinema projects, film projects, and also prototype projects. There's a huge tool set for designers that they need to have all those tools connected. The pipeline that Adobe is allowing us to have with Illustrator files, being able to be translated seamless to After Effects, being able to work with shape layers, being able to have everything organized, everything that After Effects, it's been like a huge tool for us across all this exponential growth of the studio and the industry.
Mm-hmm. How do you see your industry specifically evolving? Like, what do you think the demands, or how will it change over the next 5 to 10 years?
It's changing every year. Again, the software is pushing creatives and groups of creatives like us to reinvent ourselves and try new things and actually push those lines on those softwares. How many particles we can have in one particle simulation, how many elements we can have in real time for virtual reality around us without cracking the engine. There's always those parameters that we have to push the boundaries.
Marty, thank you so much for letting us hang out in your studio.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
It's been awesome. Jason, back to you, man.
All right, well, here we are at the demo desk with Dave S. And we're going to take a look at Character Animator. And I thought perhaps you could sort of give everyone an overview, because what I think is interesting, what people should realize is this is now the default install that they would get downloading via the Creative Cloud desktop app. Mm-hmm. You're using a native camera on your laptop, native microphone. And if they're watching the red monster right now, it's already animating to me. So maybe kind of talk about what's happening here a little bit.
Sure. Here, it was listening to your voice and analyzing which one of 66 different phonemes you're saying, then figuring out on the fly which one of 11 different mouth shapes it should show. And then also here I've got the face tracking. If I zoom in on this here, so you can see this is the tracking information. And so in real time, as I look around or I do my eyebrows, so it's all mapped directly onto the character. Now this is a pre-rigged character, but the idea is to make the rigging really easy so you can do your own characters.
Illustrate your own in Photoshop or Illustrator.
So I could show you, for example, from the start panel, this is the way the app opens up. Mm-hmm. And I'll just create a new project here. And you have these templates built in, and let's say I click on Chloe, and she immediately opens up in Photoshop. It says down here, make any changes you want, save, then switch back to Character Animator, letting you know that it's connected. So if I go back to Character Animator, you'll see she's here already, tracking me, doing what I'm doing, and I can see her different layers. But I can just go and, for now, I'm just going to change the color of her face.
Right.
And save that. And if I go back in, it updates in Character Animator right away. So obviously, you can do whatever you want in Photoshop, create the character you want, and just by replacing the layers. And there's some other template characters here designed for that as well.
And the templates really are a great way not only to just get started without having to draw something yourself, but also by breaking them down inside the Puppet panel, which I think we just briefly kind of looked upon. People can understand how the rigging works and how pieces are attached to one another.
Great for looking at those examples. Right. And the puppet's just ready for her hands are tagged with draggables, draggable handles, and I can just hit the record button right here.
She's hungry right now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so hungry. Right. And then hit stop. And there, that was that easy. I now have an animation, and I can play it back. Oh, I'm so hungry. And the visemes that it shows are down here. You can see which different mouth shapes. And if I wanted to edit that, I can just grab this, make that one a little longer, or delete it.
And you can even right-click and swap them out. So if it chose an mouth shape versus
if it chose the wrong one,
just
switch it to another one.
And emphasize again, sort of doing this manually and getting that when you're illustrating this. I mean, this is where the time is spent, right? This is where people really spend a lot of time to make the lip sync perfect. And here we're doing this automatically.
Right. Well,
immediately.
Because it's automatic, you can take this window and stream it live out to Facebook Live or YouTube Live.
Right.
And obviously you're not going to be editing it on the fly in that case. So the editing here is for if you want to do very precise.
Yeah. This was one of the ones that I think really, when we were showing these in some of our demos, this is kind of a photorealistic 3D style. Yeah. And but this is still, it's all Photoshop layers.
That's right. So she's a real doll that was
actual 3D puppet that was built.
Posable stop motion doll,
shot
with a green screen, and then all the layers shot in layers and brought into Photoshop and put together, and then brought into Character Animator. And so now, even though she looks like stop motion, and she is, in fact, is the material of stop motion, but can now be done live. And so I can move her arms around, and she's. Oops.
Okay. Saying very properly. Yes.
But Yeah, so it's this mixture of real and fake that allows you to create the performance of stop motion without the weeks and weeks of effort. And it does require the upfront creation of the puppet itself.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be used just for characters. It can be used like the physics, the built-in physics engine here, is pretty handy. For example, these balloons is just 3 separate layers. They're marked dangle, and gravity was just reversed to go up. And now you've got this fully automatic animation that's interactive.
And as we saw before, you can change the wind speed and the velocity and everything, all these other parameters there to make it look even more
real.
real.
The scene you see here can be dropped directly through, just drag and drop into After Effects, and Dynamic Link will connect them, and any changes you make here are updated live in After Effects. So because of that, I like to think that I still work on After Effects.
Right.
So it's been actually 25 years straight through.
Straight through. Yeah, well, Dave, this is amazing, and I can't wait to see how this app continues to evolve. And thank you again so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
On the Make It Show today. And thanks for watching. We will see you again next time.